Hello, and welcome to the Social Psychic Radio Show featuring Jason Zook. In uncertain times, we must change our focus and priorities. This show will highlight social justice issues with the goal of expanding minds and increasing unity, love, and mutual respect for ourselves and our planet. We support the Black Lives Matter movement. Our show aspires to promote social spirituality, which simply means that by coming together, we can solve any of our problems, including the goal of bringing an end to all forms of hate, discrimination, bias, or oppression. We must protect our environment, reform our criminal justice system, and protect every citizen from police brutality. When we come together, it becomes possible to bridge the gaps that plague our society and divide us from within. We the people means everyone.
Hello and welcome to the Social Psychic Radio Show. This is Jason Zook. It's a great pleasure that I have special guest Scarlet Porretta, intuitive, medium, psychic, as well as other healing qualities that we'll get into very shortly. As a child, Scarlett was able to see spirits, read energy, and foresee events. For many years, having these abilities frightened her. Our guest didn't understand what these abilities first meant to her, and she feared being judged. However, in time, eventually, she came to accept her intuitive abilities. And as she followed the calling that the universe laid out before her, she understood that her gift was meant to help and serve others. Whether it be in offering intuitive guidance or by speaking to one's deceased loved ones on the other side, Scarlett seeks to bring clarity and peace to others on their journeys who cross her path. If anyone would like to get in touch with Scarlett, you can go to our website at scarlett-whispers.com. It's a great pleasure. I welcome Scarlett to the show. Welcome to the show, Scarlett.
Thank you so much, Jason. I can't tell you. Thank you so much for the invite. And I'm absolutely delighted to be here. I'm a huge fan of yours. I've been
That makes me laugh. I'm not used to that.
I can imagine because you're so humble and you're so genuine about what you do. And it really resonates in your podcast, which is what attracted me to your podcast in the first place. And when you reached out to me to be a guest, I was a little bit starstruck. Like I was really super excited. So thank you so much for the invite.
That's such a nice thing to say. And from my vantage point, a little background, I know we got introduced through Podmatch. I give credit to that.
Yes, Podmatch is amazing.
We'll talk about that. I think it's a great opportunity. I've been doing my podcasting since 2018, and normally I get special guests on through publicists or my own efforts. And this, I think, is such a great icebreaker for us. It gives us an opportunity to meet each other, right, on such a unique level. Because where are you located right now?
I'm located in Ontario, Canada.
You're kind of far from Tampa.
Just a wee bit, just a
wee bit, as you'd say.
Just a wee bit, a hop and a skip away.
And I thought, we had such a great conversation yesterday, and we'll share this on the record. I thought it was so seamless. I wanted to do this on the air and have an episode about it.
I'm absolutely delighted. Yeah, we did. We had a good few giggles, some immature, but it was absolutely delightful.
One of the things I want to ask you before we even start, because we're both psychic and we're both intuitive, and we're mediums and all these other things. And we were doing something yesterday during our conversation I thought was unique. And I wanted to see if you could share that with the audience of what because I felt that too. When two psychics can get together on certain, because I do that with my best friend here in Tampa all the time.
Right.
Megan, you and I were doing that on a different level with something else without talking about what it was. I like that concept because you were describing it. And it resonates with me. It's something that the general audience will understand.
Well, you know what? And I'm so glad that you raised that, because these are things that we should be talking about often as human beings, never mind even as intuitives and mediums and psychics. We behave like we're islands by ourselves, and we think that we need to do everything alone all the time, right? I don't know what's wrong. I hope that changes with humanity. But when you get together with someone that's like-minded, it heightens the energy and it heightens our abilities. And it was so much fun to be able to do that with you yesterday and experience, how as you were talking, I was picking up on things. And as I was talking, you were picking up on things. I was fascinated to, I had only heard of the concept. I've had it maybe happen with one other person, but I was shocked to see it happening. So like you said, seamless with us yesterday. It was So
I said,
fascinating.
there's only a couple people in my life I have that with. Maybe my mom, like she and I are really
Yeah.
close. And so every time I think of her, she'll call me, or every time she thinks of me, I'll call her, that kind of thing.
Right,
Or
right,
my
right.
grandmother and I had that in the past too. But then also like close friends of mine, like my best friend I mentioned, Megan, she and I do it really well with each other. Like we can catch up
Right.
on a phone call in 2 seconds without even talking sometimes, because we just like download and connect in, and we're like, hey, what's up? Oh,
Yeah, it's so true.
it's so
It,
great.
it's so incredible. Napoleon Hill, he's one of my favorite authors. He talks about it being a hypnotic rhythm. Isn't that kind of cool? What a concept, eh?
That's a
Hypnotic
frequency.
rhythm. That's even a cool name.
I believe in frequencies and vibrations, and so I could get rhythms. I think there's something, because then there's also synchronicity, which
Yes.
is something that I know I pretty much post pretty frequently on my social media about.
Yeah,
But we had some of that yesterday going on. I want to
we
ask you about
certainly did.
synchronicity and what's your viewpoints on it, because I have my own, but I always love to hear others.
Nothing happens by accident. I know that sounds so simple. That's my viewpoint right there in a nutshell. The universe is a perfect place, and it's always plotting to do us good, even if it doesn't feel so good, because sometimes I don't quite appreciate the situations, but I got to trust and I got to surrender to the universe, right? Because I know that it's plotting to do me good. But that's the thing. Nothing is by accident. Nothing is by coincidence. And you actually were talking about some really cool coincidences, like being cut off by a car and then it had that license plate had a message in it for you. There's nothing that happens by accident.
Yeah,
What
University of
happens,
Kentucky. I remember that. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And nothing is by accident. And the thing is, though, it's up to us to have that awareness, to pay attention. It's that's the only thing. But yeah, nothing happens by accident. The universe is a perfect place.
How do you think dreams factor into all this? Because we were talking about that yesterday. I wish we could have recorded our original
Oh,
conversation. It was so like, I mean, obviously we're having fun already, but I mean, that conversation, it was like the end of the week. It's a Friday evening. And
yeah,
the
it
setup
was.
for it was we met on Podmatch. We were talking about wanting to talk more about an interview. And then we
Right.
got on Zoom together, and it was
Yeah.
just like, then we had a thunderstorm interrupt us.
Yeah.
Right. And then you had to take a screenshot of me because I looked like you said I was
Oh,
praying in deep
it
thought. And in
was it was
reality, my
it
computer
was
froze
so
up.
angelic. It was so angelic, and I know that you and I are going to post that on our social media.
Yes.
So stay tuned for that because it was a riot. Because you can see my face. I'm like, oh my god, don't lose that moment. Don't lose that moment. And I'm desperately trying to take a screenshot of it before it wipes me out. Right? It was so much fun.
In terms of your own personal experiences growing up intuitive, and I share your sentiment. When I first started out for about 10, 12 years, I was very private about it. I didn't even call
Right.
myself psychic because I didn't have the confidence to do so. But then even when I realized I had
Oh,
intuitive abilities that were very much more pronounced than I understood at first, as you do it more, it grew more, kind of thing. I found over time that I just one day, actually my best friend Megan's one of the reasons I was able to say, you know what, I'm not going to let this dictate me staying in the psychic closet anymore. I'm actually going to be open about my spirituality in the sense of letting people know, you know what, yes, I'm a lawyer. Yes, you know me as whatever, but I also have this other side of me.
yes.
And since then, it's just feel like it's taken on its own trajectory.
And
So
I'm so glad that you're open and honest about that because you know what you've just said is a real fact. A lot of people don't know that I too, like I'm a business coach, and then I kind of almost feel like I led this
double life,
second
like
life.
Clark
Yeah.
Kent and Superman.
It's so true. And it's interesting. I love how you use the phrase coming out of the closet, like the psychic closet, right? Because
It
I
is.
totally get that. That's what happened to me. The calling just became stronger and stronger and stronger. And then I was invited to do an audience reading with one of my dear friends, who is now one of my dear friends. And she had a shop out there called Moonflowers, and she arranged to have an audience reading. And in that, I invited my mom because I hadn't shared with her. I mean, you talk a little bit
Mom
here
didn't
and there.
know.
She didn't really know. No, mention it a little bit here and there, but it's one thing to say, "Oh, I have these abilities," and it's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Why
okay."
don't you come to
And I'm
my
not
show and check it out?
right, and so I'm not saying that my mom did that because she's always been an avid supporter and believer in everything that I do. Same thing with my dad. I was very fortunate in that sense. It was my way of saying, here it is. There's no denying it. You're going to see me in action, and nobody can kind of like I came out of the closet with bells on.
How did that go once you took a dive into
It
deep?
was it was amazing. It was amazing. I could see that she was very proud. And I can see that my dad today is very proud as well. So it's just kind of interesting. A lot of the fear of judgment, really, at the end of the day, happens to be within us. And so the more that we start talking about this, the more we're actually going to create a healing out there. Because I am certain our listeners out there, they're going, oh my goodness, that's me as well. I'm certain that this is resonating with many of the listeners. So I'm glad that you're doing that.
I've had people email me for my show, and this is more about a year or two before COVID, but when I first started out the first year, and people actually would send me messages on email telling me that they live in a place like Central Kentucky.
Wow.
And they have these intuitive abilities, but they don't know how to express it because there's nothing within a radius of where they live where they could go to a metaphysical shop or talk to like-minded people unless they find it through a meetup or something. But they said that they were actually happy to have a forum to feel like, you know what I mean? Just a platform where you can understand.
Someone to talk to, someone that won't judge, someone that understands, someone who gets it, and someone who is who's able to give some form of validation as well. It's like, oh, that's what that means. I mean, let's face it, Jason, there's really no school out there. Like, we go to school for education, right? Like, you went to school to study to be a lawyer, right? I went to university. I'm sure you went to university as well. We studied our fields. But as psychics, mediums, intuitives, healers, where do we go? Where do we go?
You realize, and that's true. And not only where do you go, but make sure you link up with reputable, ethical people that don't overcharge.
I'm so glad you mentioned that because you're so right.
I'm against that. When psychics charge like $9,000 a minute to charge because they think their ego gets the best of them. And I'm very vehemently opposed to that. No matter how life goes and how plentiful things can be, you should always make yourself available.
I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you.
We talked about that yesterday. Yeah. I felt so happy to hear that.
Me too, because very few psychics out there will look at it that way. People come to us when they're in need. And usually when they're in need, they're not in a happy place with abundance of money. Not always, I do have some clients that are CEOs, politicians, things like that. But let's be realistic. Your average person comes to us when they're in trouble. And so when your fees are reasonable, like your fees are and my fees are, it just opens it up for healing. It gives more people an opportunity to reach out to us. So I was delighted to hear that you did that.
Absolutely. How is it for you in Canada in terms of how, I can tell you Florida is a unique place. If you're in a big city, like I live in Tampa, so it's a pretty big city. It's a pretty great environment for me, at least to be here and do readings in person. Most of my stuff I do through Zoom and phone right now. It's just, I'm used to that. That's the way it is.
Yeah.
So I was asking, how is it for you in the area where you live?
It's been a very interesting time with COVID. As I mentioned, I'm in Ontario, and we just recently, the lockdown was lifted. So we've been on lockdown pretty much for a year with some time, they would put us on lockdown for a couple of months and maybe give us a bit of a breather for about a month or so. And then we'd go on lockdown again. But this has been pretty consistent for over a year. So it became very difficult, and it was impossible for people to see me in person. Now, having said that, though, there's always beauty in the chaos. And so my work was originally very, very restricted to, a certain region in Ontario. And now, like you said, via Zoom and other video conference methods, I'm able to, clients worldwide. And so right now I'm Canada-wide, and I'm commencing to get others, in the US as well as outside, like Italy, UK. It's quite interesting.
Let's share that on the air now too. We were talking about our roots. I don't usually talk about my father's side of the family because I think I said in the past I really didn't have that relationship with them.
Yeah.
But I have Italian influence in my life because I grew up in a small Italian town in New Jersey. Mm-hmm. We had, and that was very close to my cultural heritage and stuff like that. And I told you that I know that my dad's side of the family traces itself from one small village in Sicily. And I already located that village, and I felt like on my bucket list someday I would go to Europe in the future and be able to go check it out.
So much fun.
And so I wanted to have you share your story because it's interesting how you were just talking about your background, and it's really cool.
Yeah, it's interesting. It was funny because you and I were talking. I don't even know how we got on the topic of it, and we ended up mentioning that our ethnic backgrounds were Italian, and I find it strange. The universe right now is bringing me a whole bunch of of individuals that have that background. And I'm liking that because we're learning from each other. There are certain cultures that have embraced the kind of work that we do. They've kind of disconnected a little bit because it's not logical. Nothing we do is tangible. It's not logical. Therefore, we have to brush it aside.
Entertainment purposes only.
Correct. But if you really look at the history, there's so much beautiful, magical history in Italy, and you were mentioning that you also have another ethnic group. And when I heard
I got my mom's dad's side. My grandfather is Russian, right? And then
right.
my grandmother on my mom's side's Czech or Slavish. And I've actually went to Prague, and I felt very like
Isn't it
in my
amazing?
element there. And I know they're very intuitive there because I felt like, you could feel flashbacks almost when I went to different parts of Prague as a city. I feel like I'd been there before, even though I knew my lifetime.
It's such a fascinating experience. And when you shared that with me, I was like, whoa, what a magical combination, because these are all ethnic groups and cultures that embraced at one point in time. It was their go-to, like people didn't have doctors. They didn't have, anything. Like they went to these people who had these abilities.
I don't think of it that way. When you think it could be part of our genetic makeup of who we are if it gets passed.
I believe it is.
Because I feel like I have relatives in my family that are more psychic than they realize. Like my mom didn't really acknowledge she had psychic abilities until 2 years ago when we were on a flight together up to New Jersey and back. So
it's interesting.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. And I think that generation tended to push it to the side. It wasn't as embraced as much. And we're the offspring of that mentality, right? Prior to that, it was.
Yeah. I remember being a little kid in New Jersey and asking my grandmother, why do I feel like I've seen things before?
Oh, what did she say?
She would say to me, because she's a very keen woman, she'd say, yeah, we have that in our family, but don't talk about it because no one will ever understand you. So we don't talk about it.
See, there it is. At least she acknowledged you, though. That was a positive. But then there it is, right? Don't talk about it.
Don't talk about it. So
not normal.
How are you supposed to express that in terms of your own ability if you're being told, just don't discuss it?
This is it. And I'm certain that comment resonates with so many listeners out there, because it does with me. It's feared. There's a lot of misunderstanding when it comes to it. Like, when you talk about the paranormal, they make the paranormal really spooky and scary. Okay, like, don't get me wrong. There are the rare cases where it is spooky and scary. Don't get me wrong. I have experienced even that. But on the most part, you sit and you do a paranormal investigation. I don't know if anybody out there has done a paranormal investigation, even whether it's professionally or for fun. It's quite boring. You sit there in the dark for like hours, and if you're lucky, you manage to get a few things in here and there that make the whole night worthwhile. But that's the reality. It's pretty calm. And you speak to spirit and I speak to spirit, and they're not scary. They're not scary. They're very calm. They're very loving beings.
I'll say this. When I first started out, talking about 2004 to 2009, the first 5 years, I used to sleep with the lights on. That was more within myself. I feel like the kid from Poltergeist.
It's so true. Did you turn the TV on too?
To come at me. Oh, my TV was always off. I would never want the TV to look like
you were smart.
Heck no. But yeah, no, I will admit that on the air because I don't do it anymore. Now I've learned how to manage it so that spirits don't contact me in my sleep.
Correct.
Limbs, like, did you ever have your arm go up in the air? Or I had weird stuff like that happen.
The worst feeling, or when they jump you while you're, sleeping, that's the worst feeling.
It's uncomfortable. And they're just trying to, we're like a lighthouse to them if we're a medium and they sense it. So that's what it was. I had to learn to turn it off when I went to sleep or zip myself up in a bubble, so to speak.
It's so true. I gotta make you laugh, Jason, because I too used to sleep with the lights on. And at that time I was a single mom. So I had my little ones. Yeah. So I slept also with the TV on. And back then, because today TV is so different, but back then the channel would,
go off at midnight.
Right. And you would have all this white noise, which
Poltergeist.
was such a bad idea. It was such a bad idea. So this one night I had this experience where I could hear my grandmother trying to communicate. And it was like the weirdest, like Poltergeist. It was pretty much like that. Like you hear like this voice and it was like, you wake up and it's like, what is that? Nobody wants to wake up to anything like that,
Not at all.
So then after that, I did still keep the TV on, but I put it on, don't laugh at me, guys. I put it on the Christian channel.
You thought that would help? Might as well have I've done that before too, actually. Just as background noise to set the
I was like,
vibe.
oh God, it never went off, so I was okay. And if anything was happening, it was going to be
You're giving them
helping me.
ratings. That's good, right? I mean, whatever local channel that is, or people listen.
Totally. It was funny, but that was an eerie experience. It was an eerie experience to hear. Now looking back, like you
You
said,
know,
now we have a little more, we're more in charge of it. Now it's a little different.
what freaks me out about it? I remember when I first had my first mediumship experience. It was the night my grandfather passed away. My
Oh,
best friend from high school, who I still talk to till this day, Tracy, she and I went to high school together, and she called me to check on my grandfather. And I had a premonition 7 years before he actually passed that
that's so
when he
hard.
dies, I'd be by myself with no one to console me. Well, he had his stroke, and I got to see him the day after his stroke the next day, but he was unconscious already, and I could only touch him through his hands. He was like kind of communicating with me, and I knew it was him.
Right.
That's the first time I had a spiritual connection with him. And
Oh,
then I had to go back to work because my job at the time needed me here in Florida. So I went back to work, and then I got transferred up to Wisconsin last minute to cover a deposition for my boss at the time. I'm in Wisconsin, got stuck there an extra day or two because of the weather issues.
right, right.
As I'm there is when I found out my grandfather died, right?
Isn't
It's
that
not as much
interesting?
death that I'm reflecting on. I just remember after I had the spiritual experience with him, which I talked to you about, and I know I'm
Yes.
familiar with the Orbs of Light and Hotel and all that. My friend Tracy was on the phone calling me, and she's like, "How are you?" And I'm like, "At Panera," but it's like an hour after my grandfather came to me,
Oh,
and I realized I had this profound spiritual experience for the first time in my life, which was so pronounced. It reminded me of living my own version of an Unsolved Mysteries episode.
yeah. Oh, totally.
And so what happened was I get on the phone with her, and she just like was skeptical. So I picked up on her grandmother that
Wow.
same night.
No
Picking up some
kidding.
details. The reason I share all this, that's when I realized I was picking up on something that I wasn't used to. I went back to that hotel room, and I had every light on in the bathroom, the bedroom. I kept the sheets over my head, like not knowing
Oh,
what's coming next.
I
So, like,
feel you.
it was like the movie Ring. I didn't know someone was going to come out of the television set,
Oh,
come under the bed. And I'm in Baraboo, Wisconsin, which is beautiful that time of year in August.
of
But
course.
so I guess my point in sharing that with you is when we talk about accepting one's spirituality or psychic abilities, it has to come within ourselves. There's a
It's
process.
so true. It's so
There's an
true.
acceptance and an understanding, right? And I would say, is that what you would agree with as well?
I totally agree. And just to add to what you're saying, the way that I kind of made sense of it is if you and I were hanging out and you go to the bathroom, right? And then I stand behind the bathroom door, and when you open it, I'm like, wow, right? You know how we do that. We do that with people, right? What is your immediate reaction? You're like you jump like
Fight or
fear,
flight. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But then you see me
And you
and you
recognize.
realize, oh, I'm calm now. Well, that's how sometimes it is with spirit when we are not in charge of the abilities. Like you see something, you're afraid, you get that, and then wait a second, I don't have any validation here. What is going on, right? So you're left open. There's nothing to calm you down, nothing tangible to calm you down. Once you take charge, like you have, then
It was a
we start
process.
sleeping in the dark. We start being okay.
It was a process. Let me ask you this. When you think about your own abilities, have you found that as you do psychic readings more and more, or as you're more available and open to the public and delve in
Yes.
spirituality all the time, that your abilities have been increased
They
or
do.
improved?
It's
I've
like a
noticed.
yeah, it's like a muscle, and it
Yes.
opens up the more you do it, the more. And you know what else I found too? Because a lot of us we work with energy and cleansing of energy, and I can see in your background you've got all kinds of beautiful stones and
Yes.
things. And I in my background I have the
Favorite
same thing
thing.
exactly right. We protect ourselves, and I use herbs and things like that. And people use smudges. I use Palo Santo often, and so we're taking care of a lot of the energy on the outside.
You were saying Palo Santo?
Yep, there you go. You see, we're equipped.
Okay,
You
first
are
off, we were doing
equipped,
this.
my friend.
That was our first example of this on the air, though, right?
There you go.
Just for the
Exactly.
audience to know, if you're watching this in video when it's eventually on YouTube, because hopefully we'll get there at some point shortly. But you were just talking about Palo Santo, and I have Palo Santo cleansing spray that I've had for a while in my living room. And I use this when you get those moments during the day when you just feel like,
Yes.
and you're on the phone with someone who has
Yes.
negative energy and you just need to like clear it.
It's a
It works
go-to.
pretty amazingly. Plus, it smells like cedar to me. And so I
Yes.
like smelling like cedar. It
Oh, and
feels
it
really
feels so
comforting.
good. As you
So for
spritz
you
it, I'm
too.
like, oh, because I
I'll
know.
do it for you too.
Thank you. Thank you.
Virtually. But you
It,
said Palo Santo and boom, it's right there. How many people can say they have that?
you see, exactly. Well, that's what you and I keep doing, these quote unquote synchronicities, as you call
I
it.
know. That's not a
And it,
prop. That's next to you right
no,
there. But
right there live. Yeah, so exactly. And going back to that, what I started to do was take care of my frequency from the inside. So no drinking, no coffee, eating exceptionally well. As a matter of fact, not that I'm a believer in any particular thing, but I've gone plant-based and I found everything just exploded for me
Really?
then. Yeah, it's
You know,
crazy.
interesting you say that because now I think about it. Before I lost my 50 something pounds after my surgery from cancer and my other surgery,
Oh, you're
that's how I was
amazing.
thinking about it in my head from those things trigger it. I remember that I started doing intermittent fasting, and the intermittent fasting, I do 3-day fast, 4-day fast, where I just would sip water or sip some juice and
Right.
calm myself. Now I do intermittent fasting where I eat 2 meals a day. First one at 12, second one around 6, and I'm
I'm
done by
giggling. I do the same.
so, but that process of like keeping your body in a state of ketosis, now,
Yes,
don't get me wrong, I'll splurge and go get my chocolate milkshake from McDonald's or
totally.
my sugar binge. But I would say that my point in sharing that is there is something about that cleansed my energy that helped me become even peaked intuitive
Correct.
as a
It does.
result of that kind of nutritional change.
It makes a difference. You got to take care of the energy from the outside and on the inside, and I find even that just helps the channel open even more. It's so interesting. We At the end of the day, we're almost like we're receiving stations, I get that we're broadcasting systems as well, like we're communicating things like
Literally right now.
yeah, exactly, right? But we're also receiving stations, and the cleaner and the more well maintained that station is, the easier it is to receive. Well, I don't know how else to explain it.
What do you think about past, present, future? And I'll explain what I mean. When I explain to people that I can pick up stuff that is a possibility, I never say what I pick up is absolutely going to happen because free will can change a lot of things in life.
Agreed.
So I always say this is like a weather prediction. It might be partly sad, partly cloudy on
Yes.
Saturday with chances of light sprinkles, but the person may, change the whole thing. It doesn't, But my point is this: what do you think to explain it? Because what I explain to people, and I've gained an understanding of, or at least from my experiences, is that when someone is intuitive and spirituality, at least to me on the other side, time doesn't exist. I
Mhm.
believe time's a construct of man, that we've created time in the
Agreed.
order of our world. And it also helps with the economic and everything else, and control, right? I mean, those things
Mhm.
work. But when you talk about looking into someone's, like if someone comes to me for a reading and they get shocked that I can pick up stuff that happens in the future, I just say it's because
Yeah.
when I connect with your energy spiritually, time doesn't exist. So whatever I pick up is being told to share with you like a mirror.
You are so right.
And
And
I
that
want to
and
see
that
what
is
your
so well
viewpoint
said.
is.
I don't even know if I can add to that. That was like a perfect explanation. You're absolutely right though. When it comes to past, present, future, there is no time. Time is a man-made thing. And when you're channeling spirit, they rarely talk about time. They might give like special dates here
Yeah,
and there, but I rarely am able to pick up how many years they've been on the other side. I can tell if they've been there for a long time or a short time, but they have difficulty with years. They might be able to tell me that they passed at a certain age, but how long they've been there,
they
they
don't
have
know.
no concept. They have no concept of it.
Well,
And I like what you said about free will, because often we give readings, and in those readings are life-changing messages, right?
yeah,
And for that fate or destiny or that outcome to happen, they need to do their part. Like psychic readings are not just for entertainment. There's some homework in there too, right?
oh, for
So
sure.
if your spirit guides are sharing with you that you've got to make these changes in order for you to have this kind of future, that's their free will. That's now up to them. They've been given a glimpse. Now it's totally up to them. But you're right. Like, oh, if you say that, oh, I see you looking slimmer, which actually happened to me in a reading. I said to I know, I'm reading her and I'm like, and she was a full figured lady, beautiful
Did
girl.
you see her or was it through the phone?
No, I was actually in person at this
Okay,
time. I
okay.
could see her. And I said to her, please don't misunderstand this message. In about a year, I see you very slim. I think you're perfect. Just don't shoot the messenger. She says, oh my God, I've been actually wanting to do this. I'm embarking on this special diet, actually hoping to lose. I said, well, I see it. So now, and she actually followed the plan. And a year later, indeed, she was, oh my goodness, like I would say more than half her size, or less than half her size, I should say, that she was originally. And now there's something there, free will. So I've given the message, as I'm sure you have on many occasions. And then if she were to sit there and not do the diet plan that she planned on and ate chocolate chips and pizza and all of that kind, which don't get me wrong, it can be one of my major food groups.
Depends on the
So
stress level and the situation
correct.
involved.
Correct. And then that's her free will, and then that vision that you and I have had of the outcome is going to be altered. We can't change that. We can't be there with them, so they've got to take these messages with a grain of responsibility.
I always use the anecdote that I have a couple here in Florida that I know as friends. And I was in this condo having a party once about 14 years ago. We have something called Gasparilla. And it's an event that's like a Mardi Gras for Tampa. And so we were drinking and hanging out. I don't ever drink, but we had a few drinks. And I looked across the counter and I said to the couple, she was looking at me, he was looking at me. This is when I first started accepting that I had intuitive abilities.
Right.
And I looked at him and I said, oh, you're going to have three kids.
Oh, wow.
And she was smiling and he wasn't. And so when I walked away, my other friend said to them, oh, Jason's been pretty accurate. He's predicted 3 pregnancies recently.
What amazing.
So guess what? Free will proved that accurate as an anecdote because he went and got a vasectomy the following day.
And there it is.
And there you got your 2 kids.
And there it is. Exactly.
That is how I tell people when I read anything for them, that always humble yourself when you receive information from like us. Because yes, we're here to entertain you. We're here to give you guidance. We're a jack of a couple different trades, but for entertainment purposes only, at least legally, is how we can do it. However, that said, it's like looking at the big picture from these different angles, how these things can interplay. Yeah. And I think that's interesting to bring up, how spirituality interplays in someone's life. And when someone's not open to it, how have you had people in your life when they find out about your intuitive abilities and they're standoffish because they're not open spiritually, and they either feel threatened by you being open spiritually or they don't want to encounter it or don't want, you could do it, just don't do it around me kind of thing.
You know what, contrary to what I believed would happen, that never happened to me. As soon as they find out, and it's always through word of mouth. Like I keep it private. Although obviously I'm here on a podcast, I'm not keeping it that private. But when they did find out, they would look at me like, oh, geez. And all of a sudden they start asking me questions. Like
I've had that. Yeah, like the question is like, well, do you pick up anything right now?
Yeah. Like I'm working on a real estate deal. Is it going to go through? Like, what number should I go in at? What number is okay to accept? It becomes hilarious. It becomes hilarious.
I enjoy it because I feel that if anything, when people ask me questions, I can sometimes get answers before they finish their questions. I know it's usually a psychic source, intuitive source, and I'll give an answer. And I always want to be able to give as much information to people as I can because I feel like whatever it is I'm picking up from their energy is meant to be shared for a reason. We're like instruments, right? That's what I think.
We are. You're right.
There's no ego needed for an instrument to operate. It's like plugging into the wall. You tap in. So for anyone who's intuitive and has an ego and they're self-important, they really need to get over themselves.
You're absolutely right. Oh, I'm so glad.
Because you're not spiritual. You can say you're spiritual, but you're not.
No. And people talk about it as we have a gift. I always say
I don't even like using that word.
Me too.
It sound like we've been picked or selected.
I'm not exactly. Yeah, it makes me sound like I'm the chosen one. I'm not the chosen. I'm no different than you or anybody out there. It's an ability, and I firmly believe a lot of people have this ability. It's how we're called to do this ability. Like you've been called to heal. We were talking yesterday, you and I, which I loved, was you kept saying that we have this opportunity to heal and heal
100%.
Heal so many people. And then when we take it, to do these types of forums and conversations, we have the ability to heal even more people. And so we're doing our calling where that's what it's meant to do. So while we have a few giggles along the way, we take it very seriously.
I'll say this. One of the most awesome parts of being a psychic and having a podcast and practicing as an intuitive is having an amazing psychic friend.
Yes.
Agreed. Even though I like to call psychics on occasion as well, but I like to have psychic friends because I feel like you connect on a deeper level than normal friends.
There's a different understanding.
Like I've had psychic friends text me when I'm having a bad day and I'll be like, hello. Like it's great because you have like a psychic family, like spirit.
Correct. Family. It's a support.
I love that.
Yeah.
Do you have that experience as well in your life as you become more pronounced?
Thankfully, I do. And I have, I'm very fortunate that the gentleman that's in my life, he's very, very supportive.
That's another thing. Yeah. If you try to date somebody, good luck. If you're trying to date somebody and then you're intuitive
it's
that's
crazy.
A whole other thing.
It was actually when I decided to let him know that these things are happening, he was actually the one that encouraged me And he encouraged me to do it and encouraged me to do it more. And he would help test, like, okay, you feel a spirit in here. Okay, well, what do you feel about the spirit? What's their name? Like, so he was very encouraging, very supportive, and still is, and so he'll even see, like, this after you do so many readings and energy clearings and healings, we just get so exhausted that we want to do nothing. We can't move.
Yes. I can't
and we
overprogram
just shut
myself.
down. Yeah.
Overschedule myself too much.
Exactly. And well, you know what? We do our best to heal as many people. When someone comes to us in need, we're not thinking about ourselves, we're thinking about them. And that's why we
True.
keep booking and booking, right? And so he'll say to me, "Oh, hun," he says, did you do your cleansing?" And he goes, "Well, maybe you need to do a deeper cleansing." Like, he keeps an eye out for me. I so appreciate him. I absolutely love him to the moon and back.
It's great to have that support.
It is.
It's
And
great to have that.
my kids are supportive as well. And a secret for our viewers is they named me Scarlett. That's my name from my children. So I took it in as a second name.
That's great. How did they name you? From being little children, or
They were little. Yeah, they were little. Oh my goodness. When I say little, uh yeah, I would say, because there's 4 years between Stephanie and Daniel. So Stephanie would have probably been about 14 and Daniel would have been around 10 when they named me. And now they're well in their 20s now.
I'm going to ask you a question that is one of these standard questions for an interview. And then I want to ask you, because I want to add in my two cents on it too. If someone was to ask me, where do your messages come from? I always say my spirit guides, which I consider my grandfather as a source of it, because a lot of my psychic stuff comes from him on many levels, on a daily basis or week, whatever it is, dreams. Mm-hmm. I always know I don't acknowledge dark in anything I do spiritually. So it's not that I ignore it completely, but I just tune into the light. So for me, it's like my spirit guides, and I always do that. That's how I interpret it.
I'm so happy to hear you say that, because we do, even as psychics, mediums, intuitives, whatever we want to label ourselves, we have the opportunity whether to tap into the light or tap into the dark. And I wish the dark did not exist, but it does. And I know that you've experienced it, and I know I've experienced it. But I like what you said. We choose to tap into the light. And I do the same. I refuse to go into anything negative other than, giving people support about cleaning up their energy. Don't engage in this because you're going to tap into that negative vibration. You don't want to do that, So where do my messages come from? I strongly believe that I walk with several guides. I have one main guide that I know he's responsible. I call him Z. And I have my grandmothers.
Yeah.
And it was so cool, because yesterday when we were talking, I never shared that with you, and
no, you know
like,
why? I have to share. I didn't interrupt you. I'm sorry.
No, go for it.
My best friend down here, Megan, her grandmothers are what instilled in her psychic gift. They both met each other before she was even walking, probably.
It's amazing.
Amazing tarot readers or whatnot. And so that's where she got her gift. And as we started talking during our pre-call yesterday, I felt the same energy signature off your grandmothers that are around you spiritually.
Yeah,
so
it was so cool to hear that.
100%.
And I got to give you props too, because no one else has picked that up.
I always say it's whatever it is. It's like, if you were to say, Jason, what color shirt you have on? Oh, well, it's a dark blue shirt, navy blue with a G on it for Georgetown. Like, if you can see that, how I look at energy is, if I can read it, I'm going to say it. And it's not, there's no explanation beyond that I need to give, because I know it's coming from something that I can pick up on that has a legit source to it. My ego's not in the way.
Totally.
I don't doubt it.
And that's it. I love it. Ego doesn't get in the way, and you don't doubt it. And it's important not to doubt it, and to honor these messages that are coming through to us. Because there are times where I'm reading someone and they're looking at me and I'm like, just hear the message. I got to honor the message, because I know that they're talking to me. And in that moment, they don't remember. And then I get a message from them like a week later or 2 weeks later. And they say, oh my God, remember when you mentioned this? It happened, or this is what I found, or I got this message. It's crazy. I wish I was wrong about one It sits in my heart because they didn't take my message seriously. I was reading this young girl and I was saying, and I read her mom as well. Like, so I read them back to back. And I kept saying to the mother, your husband, I see him not well. There's something, with a heart challenge. She's like, no, what are you talking about? Like he's perfectly well, like he's healthy and everything. And I got a message from the daughter and she had said, Scarlett, you were so right. My dad had a massive heart attack. And this was maybe 6 months later. I wish I was wrong.
Hard.
More so, what I wish is that they had at least heard that message so they could have avoided that, because our spirit guides are wanting to do us good. The universe is plotting to do us good. So are our spirit guides. They want to give us the heads up so we can avoid certain challenges, So it's tough.
What do you do when you first get your experience of predicting something that you found that was accurate? Like when you, before you did it professionally, but when you're picking up either mediumship experiences, because for me, the first exploration of being psychic or intuitive was being a medium. I just somehow was like tuned into that. When I'd walk into a room, if someone's grieving somebody or someone needs to come through, it would pop in and that'd be the end of it. Now, then everything else kind of grew from there. So I was gonna ask you, what was it like for your experience with all that?
It was a little unnerving. It was a little unnerving. And I remember a few situations. And of course, they're not negative. It's part of life. Like I was able to feel when one of my family members was going to pass. Like there was, like my grandfather passed away. And so when I was able to predict it, not down to the exact day, but around the week. Yeah, I was able to predict it. That was difficult. One of the most alarming ones is I was hanging out with a bunch of friends. This was many years ago. I was in my early 30s at the time. And I didn't know these people. I knew only a small group of us, but the majority of them, we were hanging out in their home. And I kept seeing this girl in this white, very pretty girl. And she was like in this white kind of gown. And she was standing in the water. And I'm like, what the heck? I feel like a weirdo. Like, why does this woman keep coming to me, this young girl? Like, why is she coming to me? And every time I went to that house, I kept seeing this, and only to find out that this girl drowned. It was like, oh. And then it's one of those things that, and I didn't know her, and I didn't know that she was friends with the others. I didn't know any of that, right? And I just felt like, who is this person? But then it happened where I went back to the home after a while, because we would hang out for years, right? And I saw the photo and I was like, oh my God, that's that girl. I'm like, who is that? Oh, it's a good friend of us. She drowned. I'm like, oh, Mother of God.
Did you tell them?
I didn't tell them. I told one of my close friends.
That's hard because you don't know how to best explain it or what to say.
I didn't know.
Or you say anything at all.
Yeah. And then you kind of feel, oh, you feel like, what do you do with this information? Now I know what to do with the information, but at the time you didn't, you don't know what to do with the information.
What do you think in terms of your own abilities out of the stuff that you could do that you pick up for other people, or what's the part of it that you enjoy the most out of the different psychic things?
Whether I'm channeling or doing like a guidance or clarity reading, or I'm channeling like a loved one on the other side, I love the fact that I can give them peace and clarity. I'm so grateful for that. I'm not grateful for, their discomfort, or in the case of, a lost, where they've lost someone that they love. I'm not grateful for that. I'm grateful at the opportunity, to be able to give them that peace and clarity. One situation recent that comes to mind was a lady who was in Scotland, and they immigrated to Canada not that many years ago. And unbeknownst to me, they wanted to see if her son would come through. And the girl that arranged for the readings would have been the sister and the daughter of this woman. And I kept seeing an orb flying in the room. And I said to her, I said, my goodness, I see an orb. It's got a male energy attached to it. And then I feel that, it's contemporary. In other words, this is not someone older or younger, but this is a little bit older. This has got to be like a brother of yours. And the girl was freaking. And so she says, can I get my mom to come in? I said, absolutely. So I started saying, and then I saw what happened to this poor soul. I said, he shows me a living room, and he shows me a window. I said, I'm not understanding what he's showing me. Why am I seeing this living room? I said, not only that, but this living room doesn't look like a typical living room here in Canada. And the mother burst into tears. And I said to her, everybody's wondering the way he passed was an accident or if he took his life. I said, and I'm so sorry to say to you that it was not an accident. This individual, and we just kept doing with the reading, and there was a lot more that came through. The mother was in tears, and I said to her, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I said to her, and she said to me, no, don't be. She said, nobody ever could reach my son. And I always knew that he had took his life, but the police said that it was an accident. And I always had this thing. And she went on for over 20 years with this heartache. And so when she was crying, she says, no, these are tears of relief.
Yeah.
And I was like, there it is.
Catharsis, right? The emotional catharsis of the spiritual experience, I call it.
Right.
And that's happened in weird places. I've been at a bar, think happy hour,
That's a weird place already.
summertime, 5 o'clock, happy hour, 6 o'clock, crowded. And I'm drinking just one drink, and there's someone who walks up to me and says, oh yeah, I know you're intuitive. Can you pick up anything over me? Like,
yeah.
And all of a sudden I pick up something, and then they start bawling their eyes because it's something like it's a catharsis. It's their aunt, their uncle, whoever passed away that they didn't expect to actually come through, and it freaks people out. Is that just the emotional healing process that makes you cry like that? Because I always wondered about that. It's a shock to the system, right?
It is a shock to the system. And I think that there's also an element of release. When someone has all of these emotions that are just jammed right down in there, and it's happening over years and years, and then to have an opportunity for that relief, for that validation, and not only that validation, but to hear from that loved one, oh, he's okay, he's fine, and I think it's just a whole combination of like a volcano of emotions. And yes, it comes out in tears. My goodness. Yeah, I've never been hugged so much, because this poor woman had gone over 20 years, psychic after psychic, medium after medium, and no one was able to. And that's not to discredit any of these psychics or mediums. Not, Spirit's funny, and I'm sure you're going to get this too. Sometimes they don't want to talk to you because they're not comfortable with that individual. It doesn't mean that they're not around.
I had someone get upset with me. I gave them a full reading. This didn't happen that long ago, actually. I gave them a full reading, and the last 5 minutes of the reading, they decided to ask about one of their deceased relatives. So of course I went over time because more information is coming through. Right. But then the person came back and told me I wasn't specific enough as a medium, so I'm not a good medium. And I'm like, well, don't ask me about your deceased loved one 3 minutes left in the reading and expect me to get something that is worthwhile.
Yeah. Well, you can't get the kind of validation that they're looking for. And here's the other thing too that I want to mention, Jason. I'm so glad you raised that, because a lot of people come to their readings with an agenda. We kind of talked about that yesterday, right? They'll come to their reading with an agenda, like if you say this to me during the reading, like, they want to hear from their mom, and if you say the word flower, during a reading, well, then I know you're here. Well, Spirit doesn't respond well to that. They respond to open emotions. Like I said, we're a receiving station. We can't control what's coming in. And you're right. In 3 minutes, there's no way that you're going to get the kind of validation.
Speed dating.
Yeah, I can't do that either. I might be able to get a little bit, just.
I let the person go out of their way and said, "Have a nice one. Stay in your lane." I don't want to deal with this because this is just a low vibrational energy kind of thing.
Well, this is it. They've obviously come to the reading with an agenda, and Spirit is very particular. I recall one time doing an audience reading, and I kept looking at this woman. I'm like, I have a message for you, but I don't have a message for you. And I felt so bad because I would go around the audience, and then I would go back to her, and I said, I know that there's someone that wants to talk to you, but I just can't. They're just not saying anything to me. So the lady came back to me in private, and as she sat down, her husband came through. I'm like, oh, your husband is here. And I said, she says, yes, I wanted to hear from him in the audience. And I said, and immediately he whispers to me, I didn't want to talk in front of everybody. So I was like, we have to honor that. And she started giggling. She started laughing. She goes, oh my God, that is totally something he would have said and done because he's very private.
It's the personality coming through.
Well, this is it. So exactly. So
I love that part of the readings when you could do that and take on the personality of the person and let the person see that. I think that's helps a lot with giving the person the ability to see something that they probably can't
Oh,
quantify otherwise.
absolutely. Has someone that you've channeled ever made you crave something that you wouldn't normally have? Have you ever had that
Yes,
experience?
I actually, when I do readings, I've had situations where I'll give a reading here at my house and I'm on the phone. I'll do a phone reading and I'll walk around my house like pacing, and I'll bring it up during the reading. I go, why am I pacing right now? Oh my God, he used to pace all the time. And I'm like, but I can't stop. Well, he wouldn't stop either. I'm like, but I'm literally walking around in circles. That's what I just get the mannerisms as I get the energy when they're coming directly in.
That is such a riot. It's so interesting how they do that. I guess they jump us, you know. I don't know
It's all
however.
energy, right?
Yeah, it
So
just they jump us with energy, and
I've
and
had
and we kind of become them in that
I've had
moment.
my lights flicker in my house. I've
Oh,
had lights flicker in the person I'm giving the reading for in their house and my house at the same time. As I said, that he used to flick
that's
your
so
lights.
creepy.
And she said, yes, he did used to flick the lights as a joke when they were alive in the house together. So
But that's so
all those
cool.
kind of things, it's just so much validation for to know that this stuff is real. It's not made up. You can't script this.
Not. No, you can't.
And
You
if you did, it
can't.
would take so much work. My God, I wouldn't be able to do it.
Honest to goodness, you're absolutely right. And I feel for mediums, you know, especially the ones that tend to go a little more public. And there are some well-known mediums, and the media always criticizes them, you know? And I feel for them because I totally understand that being able to, or being needed to do it and perform at that rate, you know, and with those expectations. Of course, that just starts crossing the lines with spirit. It doesn't work that way, you know. It
It's
just
hard.
doesn't.
It's not to lose yourself in anything you do in life, no matter what job you have. Don't lose yourself in that position or
Oh, that
opportunity, right?
is,
If you stay true to yourself, then you won't
yeah.
let that happen, because no matter what you become or who you are, you'll stay true to yourself. You'll always be
Mhm.
grounded. That's how I
Yes.
look at it.
I love it. That was just such a profound statement, you know, truth.
Do you
Very,
believe that
very.
we're already running low on time? How fast this went?
No, it feels like 5 minutes, my friend.
58 minutes. I'm like, well, where did that come from? That's
This is what I
crazy.
love about you.
Okay, let's do the business side for a minute. Shout out. How can our audience find you? I mentioned it during the intro, but please give me all your information so that our audience can find you online, social media, website, everything else.
I really genuinely appreciate that. They can find me on Facebook or Instagram at Scarlet's Soul Cafe. And it's Scarlet with one T. I know some people spell it with two, so you might have difficulty if you're adding that extra T. So it's Scarlet Soul Cafe, and that's Instagram and Facebook. And you can always reach me through my website at Scarlet's with an S dash whispers.ca. And a lot of people say to me, why Scarlet's Whispers? Well, because I hear whispers all the time.
You know what I like too about your answer just now when you just gave that? That's one of my other approaches. I try to let people know this stuff isn't supposed to be mystical or mysterious. I
Yeah.
dumb it down, so to speak. I'm like, if you understand how electricity works, energy
Correct.
works, spirit works the same way. So I just happen to be receptive and I can pick up on it. That's what it is. Everyone can
It's
do that.
so true.
I try to
It's
simplify
so
to take away
true.
that mystery so people aren't afraid of it.
Agreed, agreed. And I like that because they shouldn't be afraid. You know, the spirit world is very much like the living world. You're going to get people that are kind. You're going to get people that are not so kind. You're going to get people that are angry. It's no different. It really is no different. They just want to talk to us, no different than we want to talk to each other.
100%. I love this. This has been such a great opportunity for me too. And I really appreciate you coming on
Oh, thank
and
you so
sharing your
much.
insight. And I am going to post that really interesting picture that you took.
I love
I'll
it.
share this with the audience because they'll be meaning to when they actually listen to the whole
Right.
episode and go back and look at this. So as we're doing a Zoom call right now, the screen split in two. And yesterday when we had our initial call, that was only supposed to be like a half hour, but we made it like an hour or so
Oh
long
my
because we
gosh.
enjoyed it so
Yeah, it was
much.
so much fun.
The screen froze when there was really bad weather here in Tampa,
Yes.
and I was out. Like I got knocked off Zoom for about 15, maybe 2 minutes. Say
It was a few minutes. Felt like an
2 minutes.
eternity, but it was a few
Yeah.
minutes. Yeah.
So you took a screenshot of
I
it.
did. And you were like in this pose, but it was so angelic. It just captivated your essence. I was like, "Oh my gosh." I just
You know what I was
panicked.
doing in that image? Praying, please let the internet work.
Isn't that
This is
fun?
the phone. I want it to work. Let it work. And so you saw me praying that I wanted the internet to work because it was going out and the screen was going out.
You
So
were just it just
please.
captivated. Oh, it was something else. So yeah, I'm going to be posting it on my social media as well.
That's such a unique picture. That's why I'm glad you sent that. I appreciate it.
Are you kidding? My pleasure. And thank you kindly for having me here.
Well,
This has
thank
just
you.
absolutely been delightful to spend time with you and your listeners. Absolutely honored. Thank you so much.
And as a result of us talking yesterday, I feel like we could have a very good long-term working
I agree.
collaboration
I
going on. I feel
agree.
like we should
Everybody
definitely
should
do
stay
that.
tuned. There'll be more of us.
100%. 100%. I just want to thank Scarlett for coming on the show today and sharing her insights, her unique perspectives on what it's like to be an intuitive psychic medium and growing up and just experiencing these various parts of yourself that come to life. Sometimes people call it spiritual awakening. It depends on how sudden it occurs. Is it onset right away or is it over time gradually? Whichever it is, there's a paradigm shift that occurs. And I know my show talks about paradigm shifts a lot. I believe in being intuitive and understanding spirituality, and which all of us have in some way in our lives, we all need to look at it from a different set of lens. It's not something that's some mystical thing to be feared or manipulated. It's meant for a greater understanding of ourselves. I believe that any reading I do with my clients, when it's an authentic, real, great reading, is there's a learning experience, not just for the person who you're reading for, but for the person who does the reading. I actually can tell you that through many chapters of my life in the last few years, like when I had cancer, for example, I remember the 3 months that I was dealing with that in my mindset, I had several people come to me who were dealing with guidance and advice about either loved ones who had cancer and were going through treatment, or they were fearful of it for themselves. And from the readings I gave those clients, I learned insights within my own fears, insights within my own point of view. I share this because when talking to Scarlett, I feel that we're like receptors, like she said. We're there, we're accentuators. We're there to help bring out information that might not be as on your horizon or in your foresight of what you're looking at and considering. So when you consider going to a psychic or talking to a psychic, think about why you want to speak to one. Think about not going in there with an agenda. Like Scarlett said, have an open perspective. Because when we do readings, we don't have a script we read. We don't have a set specific thing we do for that reading. It comes through naturally. It's part of nature. Keep that in mind as well. So I share all that because Scarlett is an amazing psychic medium. I can tell you she read for me yesterday. So check her out. Her website, scarlets-whispers.com, Scarlett with one T, plural. Check out more of our episodes. We'll be continuing our programming, but definitely check us out. Stay positive, because when you're positive, anything's possible. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Social Psychic Radio Show. Don't forget to join us for another episode next time. If you enjoyed the show, we'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give us a review on iTunes. You can also check us out on Facebook, and don't forget to visit the Social Psychic YouTube channel. Until next time, it's a big world out there. Keep an open mind, embrace your paradigms, and know that the universe is always yours to explore.